Hello, everybody. This is Nikki from Motherhood Unfiltered, and today I have Brenden K. That's all I'm going to say because I can't pronounce his last name, but I don't want to mess it up. So he's the founder of MasterTalk, and he coaches ambitious executives and entrepreneurs and teaches them how to become top communicators in their industry. So he also has his own YouTube channel, and he offers a free 90-minute course. So to help you become a better version of yourself and talking to people in crowds or whatever, you know, whatever your situation you're in. But before we bring him on, I just want to remind you to, if you're watching on YouTube, to like, comment, and subscribe. And that's a demand. Well, it's a request, but I would demand that I really urge you to do that. So, but it just helps me move up the food chain. And then if you're watching on, or I'm sorry, if you're listening on a podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the episode so I can see how well I'm doing. It's kind of like a report card, and I would really appreciate that. So without any more delays, I'm going to bring Brenden on, and he's just been so much fun to talk to, and I can see why he's used communication as his niche to get out to the world here. So let's see here. Okay. Hi, Brenden.
What's up, Nikki? How are you?
I'm good. So, so when I saw your pod match profile, I was like, what is this person doing here? you know? And so I was so curious after I read your profile that um, you use communication and how to help people become better communicators. So, how did you get started? Teaching other people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, Nikki. Fantastic with getting started. So for me, it all started in college. I went to business school, and I did these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, Nikki, but for nerds, right? So while
Yeah.
other right, it's kind of that's the way you got to see it. So while other guys my age were playing football, or like
Hmm.
rugby, like baseball or basketball, yeah, that scares me a little bit. So I don't do that. I did presentations competitively. That's how I learned how to speak.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, Nikki, I started giving back to the student community. And I
Hmm.
realized as I was coaching the students that everything I was sharing with them wasn't available for free on the internet. So I started making videos, and given it's motherhood unfiltered, I was making videos in my mom's basement, frankly. And,
Yeah.
a few years later, it just blew up.
Well, I love that you just decided like, oh, so you need to learn how to talk. Well, let me help you out. And then you just used it to earn a living. So, and I'm sure your mom doesn't mind. I like when my kids are home. So, but so what kind of competitions? I mean, whenever we first talked, it reminded me of like those rap battles, you know, but they're educational, but I mean, that's kind of what like I could see you up giving your presentation and someone's like, oh, I'm going to beat Brenden, and then he comes up with his and then it's, so I mean, give us a scenario how that works.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the right question to ask, Frank. A lot of people don't know what a case competition is, but I'll definitely caveat by saying Brendan is not the next Eminem. Let's put it that way. definitely, definitely not. So whenever you have an 8 Mile, that movie that
Yeah.
is not definitely. That's like in the ghetto. That's like underground.
I
Everyone's got
know, I
like
know.
dangerous weapons, and so yeah, this is a bit more fancy. So think of it like this: you have these 20-year-old kids, Nikki, who get a 20-page document. Okay, that's what it is. So
Uh-huh.
20-page document, that a business is having a problem with. Let me give you something super simple to explain.
Okay.
So let's say Walmart. Walmart is a good example of a company that was a case sponsor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a true story. So Walmart, let's say they give us a problem and they go, okay, guys, we don't know what aisle to shelf this product. What should we do? So what happens is 3 students have 3 hours without any internet access to go through the entire 20-page document, create a presentation, do financial statements, find an answer to the solution, and then present it to the board of executives.
Oh
But
my.
yeah, it's pretty nuts. And I'm sure the next question you're probably thinking of, Nikki, who in their right minds would volunteer to do this? Why would you do
Yeah.
that? And the answer
Well,
to the question, go ahead.
my thought was, wait a minute, no internet access?
Yeah, no
How
internet.
did you guys even figure that out?
Right.
I mean, I come from a, a world where there was no internet, and but my kids, that's all they've ever known. So I mean, so finish your your story.
No, of course. So you're right. We had no internet access. That's why we had a 20-page document. So it gives us all of their.
Gotcha.
But obviously, think about it. You got 3 hours to prepare this thing. And by the way, at the end of the 3 hours, Nikki, there's no practice time. Like at the end of the 3 hours, you go straight to the judges and you present.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how it works. So once again, going back to the question, I'm sure a lot of the
Yeah.
mothers are thinking about why did I put myself through this? Like, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
So the quick answer is think of it like a feeder school for all of the best jobs in America.
Oh, okay.
So all of the
Yeah.
best jobs at IBM, at McKinsey, at Walmart. The reason that the judge is not like some store manager, it's the senior vice president of Walmart.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, he's like the head of the Canadian market. So the reason and Walmart probably spent using them as an example because they were a case
Yeah.
sponsor like 5 years ago, long time ago. So
Right.
they shelled out. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars they're paying
Oh
to
my
sponsor
God.
these things. And the reason they do it, Nikki, is because remember, nobody's willing to do this. So the kids who volunteer for this, these are the kids who are going to be the all stars at Walmart in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's why the guy's there. That's how I got multiple jobs and why I did it in the first place. MasterTalk just ended up being an accident after that.
Yeah. Wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, to have executives throw this on there and say, okay, here's a problem. I need you to solve it. So how did so you said there's 3 on the team. So how did you dissect the 20 pages? I mean, because there's lots of information in there. I mean,
Wow. I mean, you're the
I mean,
first person to ask me that question. I love your curiosity, and I'm happy to answer. So how it works? So every team had their own strategy. Just to give you even to push the
yeah.
analogy even further, you think this is the craziness? These are international level competitions. So I kid you not, Nikki. I have friends in Singapore, Australia, Ireland. Why? Not because I visited these countries, because all of them take flights to Montreal. Isn't that to push the analogy even further? There are people in Singapore where their business school spends thousands of dollars. They sponsor the whole thing for their best students. They fly out, and
Wow.
the only thing these students do is they present PowerPoint slides all week. That's it. And obviously there's parties and all that stuff, but you get what I mean. So which we
Yeah,
don't have to
that's
get
the
into.
bonus.
Yeah. That we don't talk about today. But the point is that's the case. So to your point,
Wow.
how do
Yeah.
you do this? So some people, what they did, Nikki, is some team members just wouldn't read the case. They would just go right into slide design right away and start popping up slides. Other teams
Okay.
generally read all of it together and then they split up the case. They go, okay, you work on the
Hmm.
analysis, I'll work on implementation, somebody else works on, and there's always a numbers guy or gal who's like doing the numbers.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's a tricky dynamic. Let's just say it's high pressure and I learned a lot.
Yeah. I guess that's why you do those things when you're young, because, young people have more stamina. I would have been like, dude, you're the vice president. You can't figure this out. You've got problems. Why are you asking me? I mean, like, you don't know what aisle to put the flour in. I don't, you're already lost. But so So using that scenario, you started helping other students do the same thing. And so, how did you break it down to teach what you've learned to other students and then other, people? I mean, how did you break it down and what are your steps?
Absolutely, Nikki. I mean, you're so good at this. You're asking the right questions. I would say at the beginning, I sucked at coaching because I was never meant to
Yeah,
be one. It was more
right.
just kind of like going into the analogy. I entered the second, third year of this program where
Yeah,
I became a mentor because I'd started winning these competitions.
right.
And I just said, okay, well, 10%, 20, 30% of our delegation are terrible communicators. And they
Yeah,
either learn from me or they learn from a rock. So I guess they picked me. And I had no clue what I was doing. Remember, I was a 19-year-old kid when I started coaching.
yeah,
I've been coaching for 7 years now. I'm 7 years into
yeah,
this,
yeah,
right? So this is not like a recent thing. So I started coaching them, and I had no idea what I was doing. Like I was just
right,
because I knew I was a great speaker, but I had no idea how to teach it.
right.
But through that trial and error, I found the trajectory. So I'm happy to share it. So don't worry, I'm not lost anymore. But
Well, that's good.
right. So where do we start, Nikki? Especially in the context of your audience, right? I'm guessing, wild guess, most of your audience are mothers,
Yeah,
right? Right. I kind of hope so. It'd be
yeah,
kind of weird if 80% of your audience were like dads or something. But it's like, why are you on motherhood unfiltered? So the advice I would share is realize why it matters. Let's start there. So the question I
right.
always like to ask is how would your life change if you became an exceptional communicator? Because a lot of mothers right now are probably listening to us. People are still tuning in. They're probably like, okay, Brendan's talking about business. And he's like, and like Nikki's asking about like these cases. I'm not gonna do any of this. Give me a few seconds
But
there. Right, go ahead.
yeah, but you might. I mean, because you've got, I would love to turn back time and be able to talk to my kids, and now they're adults. How can I better communicate to them? Because I feel like there's been so many times when I've tried to get something across and they're looking
Hmm.
at me like, you are from Mars. I have no idea what you're saying, and I am way smarter than you. So, you know, I'm sure you've been in that scenario.
With my own mother, actually.
Yeah.
But more in the other way. I was the immature one because I have the self awareness. But the point I want to drive, which is exactly what you hit on the nail, Nikki,
Hmm.
is communication is every moment of your life.
Yeah,
Right. It's
it
the way you
is.
talk to your family. It's the way that you order food at a restaurant. It's the way that you order makeup online. It's the way that you meet
Hmm.
strangers when you travel. And when we realize, Nikki, that communication is about leading a more fulfilling life,
Hmm.
that's when the magic starts to happen.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, I feel like I was so much smarter than what I really was. And now that I'm older, I was like, oh man, I was not as smart as I thought I was, because a lot of times I struggled with communicating, especially like through work. I mean, I've been at my job for almost 20 years, and I think I just spent the first 19 of it trying to tell these people, my ideas and my skills, and you know and it's just so hard for some people. I know it has to be hard. So.
Absolutely, it is. And the reason it is, Nikki, it's not really our fault. It's
Hmm.
because of the way the education system raised us. Think about it. Every
Yeah.
presentation we've given in our life, in
Hmm.
school, high school, elementary, that's where we learn it,
Hmm.
is mandatory. We don't wake up one morning and say, "Hey, Nikki, you want to like make some pancakes and present all day?" Like
No.
no, nobody says that. And
You're
then this,
right.
right, and I'm not even done. This is like the first one. There's three problems. So the second one, you think that's bad. Every presentation's different. You don't get to talk about what you care about. It's
Oh
not like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like you got to talk about like the history of Missouri, and you're like, what? And it just doesn't make any sense. And that's what we have to do. And then the third piece, the worst thing, Nikki, every presentation is tied to a punishment.
Oh my God, yes.
right? So if you don't do a great job, you lose like 30% of your grade. And that's why
Yeah,
we grow up fearing communication, seeing it like a chore.
right.
And frankly, no one wants to get better at doing the dishes.
You know what? That's so true. That was my chore growing up, and I hated it. Well, I mean, there were seven of us in the family, so could you
Wow.
imagine how many dishes we had?
My goodness.
I was like, y'all people, you people need to start using paper plates. I'm done. And my mom, she just roll her eyes at me. But so anyway, so yeah, communication is definitely important. So when I thought to have you come on and talk, I was thinking of moms being able to talk, to express their feelings to their loved ones, to their significant others, to their kids, or talk to the teachers at school. Because unfortunately, I got a lot of emails and calls about my kids. So I and I would just have to go in and be their champion, because they may not have liked what they had done. And to me, I'm like, I didn't see anything wrong with that. They're expressing their views, they're defending themselves. So, or when I felt like they were being mistreated, So here I am, a single mom at the time, going in and talking to mainly men, and that's intimidating for someone like me, so and letting them know, hey, what I do not appreciate what you did, I mean, that takes a lot of guts to do that, but so I felt like having you come on would be a great opportunity to teach us. I think you said you had like three skills. So what are we only did one, so what are the other two?
Absolutely. And let me start with that. I feel your story is so powerful, Nikki, because
Yeah.
it really symbolizes, and thanks for sharing that, because I know how tough it is to be a single mom, not for me and myself being a single mom, but my mother raising me pretty much as a single mom.
Right, right.
So definitely empathetic. So in that context, I completely agree. So you know where I always
Right.
start the conversation, then let's jump into the tips. Is for me the goal, the purpose of today's episode. My goal out of this is that mothers walk away from this thinking that communication is fun. Because
Mhm.
if we think communication is fun, it's interesting, it's exciting, that's what
Mhm.
will allow us to work on it ourselves and create a better life
Right.
for our children. Right.
Right.
And I always like to say this, and I know you probably say this yourself on this podcast, is that kids will never do what we ask them to do, especially as parents.
And you
But
know that firsthand, right?
yeah, there you go. But, and this is really important,
Yeah.
they'll always be who we're being. They'll always do what we do. So what does
Oh,
that mean?
okay.
Okay, so I'll give you an example with my mom. Because she never taught me this lesson. She just did it and I just became
Yeah.
that person. So I was
Right.
10 years old, Nikki, and I find a $10 bill on the floor. And for me
Mm.
back then, because I grew up in a really poor family, my parents were factory workers. So
Right.
for me, $10 was like $10,000. You might as well just give me 10 grand. It's like I was like, my
Yeah.
God, I could buy crazy amounts of candy, right? It'd be
Yeah,
nuts.
exactly.
So I find the $10 on the floor and I go up to my mother, and she didn't even realize she was teaching me a lesson. She was just saying as a matter of fact. So I take the
Mhm.
$10. I tell my mom, Mom, I found $10. The first thing she asked me, Are you sure that wasn't anyone else's $10? I was like, No, Mom, it wasn't. Okay, don't put me in jail, Nikki. So it really wasn't. Thank God, because I wanted that $10.
Yeah.
And then after that, she smiled when I said no, and she said, Brenden, when I first immigrated to Canada, she immigrated from Sri Lanka in like the early '90s.
Mhm.
It's like a country south of India.
Right.
So she gets here and she tells me about a story about how she found a $20 bill on the floor
Oh,
because
wow.
she's short, so she's always walking around. She's always looking at the floor, and she found this $20 bill, and then she said something that completely changed my life, and it
Yeah.
wasn't a lesson. And I'll tell you why it wasn't. She said, "Oh, and I used that $20 bill to feed a family that couldn't afford to eat that day."
Oh my God.
But she said it so nonchalantly, like it's something you're supposed to do. So because ever since
Yeah.
I heard that story,
She
right?
threw down the gauntlet. That's what she did.
Right. So it completely changed my perspective in life. That's how I
Right.
became a quote unquote generous person. And then I
Right.
told her that story 10 years later, and she
Yeah.
completely forgot about it. She's like, "What do you mean?" So
Yeah.
that's the point.
Right. Well, I can totally see that happening. I mean, I've done that too. And I would always say, well, if you can sleep at night, go ahead. And they're like, I can see the wheels turning like, am I going to feel guilty for keeping this $10? So,
I
and, I just
Good.
try to teach them to make good decision, logical and good decisions. Like, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions. So are you willing to do that? I mean, if you are, then go ahead and do what you're going to do. And I feel like being giving them those options, they oh my lord, my cat's meowing. Given that geez, the confidence to be able to, talk to people and do those things. So, which let me tell this story and you'll see why. So, my youngest son was in school, and he was in English, and the teacher said, I want you to read this story and then do an essay, and you're not going to get any credit for it. And so the kids were all grumbling. My son says, wait a minute. I have to read this book and give an essay, and I'm not gonna get any credit. And she says no. And he says, well, I'm not doing it. And like the whole class was like, wait a minute. Yeah, we're not gonna get credit. Why are we doing it? I was I told him, I said, you are gonna create a mutiny in that class. you know. But I don't understand why. First of all, I don't understand why the teacher wasn't going to give any kind of credit for it. But I guess it was something that needed to be done. But my son was like, if I'm not going to get any credit, I'm not going to waste my time doing it. Now if you're going to give me some extra credit, then I'll do it. So that's just like an example, of how they used, you know, that to make decisions in their life. So what was the third tip that you have?
Absolutely, Nikki. So in the I love your story, but that's so funny. I would have done the same thing, honestly,
I'm
but
sure you
I would have communicated it differently. I would have been like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And I'll say like 5 words and then give it in because it's no credit. That's what I would have done differently.
this assignment sucks. I mean,
There you go. No,
yeah.
no, no. I'd be like, "Thank you for the opportunity," but
You're so polite.
you learn over the years. You learn over the years.
Yeah.
But I would say, Nikki, that what's the key? The key here is as mothers, we need to be role models,
Yeah.
communicators for our kids. And here's what I
Right.
mean specifically, because I find a lot of mothers don't think about this. Because even if I don't coach mothers directly, I coach executives who are also mothers, right?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.
So in the context, what I would say is it's not really about how to deal with the parent teacher meetings, with
Mhm.
the postman. It's not about how do you deal with each of these specific strategies. It's
Mhm.
more about how graceful are you in those interactions.
Mm.
Because the way you're speaking to every human being is the
Mhm.
way that your kids will speak and interact and resolve conflict with everyone
Mhm.
else around their life. So the reason I'm a super calm person, I actually argue has very little to do with me. It's
Mhm.
because my mom is a very calm individual.
Right.
She's very
Right.
petite, very sweet, very calm. So
Mhm.
she never yells. So
Oh my
because of
god.
that, the only people I yell at is my clients. But outside of that, I never yell at my mother. Never, never, never. When I meet new people, I never yell at them.
See, that's the dream mom I wish I was. I'm not like that.
Right?
I'm very opposite of that. So
But you have good reason to be, right? Because you were growing up in a family where there were 7 other kids and you always had to fight to get your thing. right? See?
Right. Yeah.
So there's always a reason behind everything. I know it's kind of a little freaky. I'm like reading your mind and stuff, but but it's like
Yeah.
anyways, the point I want to drive, is depending on how old your kids are, based on who's listening, uh, involve them into the tips we're going to share. So I'll give you a couple.
Hmm.
One is the random word exercise. So the random word exercise is simply this: pick a random word like pistachio, like
Uh-huh.
socket, like wall, create presentations out of thin air. This helps us deal with uncertainty. So whenever we're
Oh, yeah.
communicating in general, we
Uh-huh.
can do well. But what I encourage people to do on this podcast is do this with your kids, your nieces and
Hmm.
your nephews. But,
Hmm.
and this we go back to role models because we set all that context, you
Hmm.
need to start. That means you
Okay.
go up to your 7-year-old or your 10-year-old and you go, you give me a word and you take the initiative. And
Oh,
then the
Lord.
kid is like going, wow, mom, you're so good. And then you spin it back. Don't
Yeah.
don't don't go tricking me. Don't tell her or him they're playing a game. You got to take the leadership first,
Right. Right.
and then people follow you after. So that's one. Second one is so simple that nobody does it. Make a list of the people that you love in your life that you really
Hmm.
appreciate and send them a video message. 20 seconds. And what
Oh,
we'll
okay.
right? So what we'll find, Nikki, is when we make a list of the people, these are people who pour into us, right? The people who
Yeah.
love us. We'll
Yeah.
notice very quickly that we've never sent any of them a single video message.
Yeah.
Just going like, hey, Nikki, really appreciate what you're doing with the world. Keep it up. Simple. Nothing crazy. And it really changes the world. It really does. So that's the second thing. Do this with your kids. If you're a mom, send video messages to your kids. They'll go like, "Mom, why are you sending me a video message?" But then it might not hit that day, but 10
Yeah.
years later when that kid's my age, when they're like 25, they'll
Yeah.
remember those moments.
Right. Right.
So that's the second thing. And the third one is more of a funny one. I don't know if this necessarily applies in the context of your show, but I'll share. It's called question drills. So
Uh-huh.
basically, what that is, Nikki, is we get asked questions all the time in our life. Like, let's use the parent-teacher relationship, right?
Right. Right.
Let's use that one because that's a fun one. Maybe not as fun, but you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can figure out what are the questions that this guy's going to ask me, and how do I prepare answers to those questions so that I
Yeah.
come off as calm, confident, and professional rather than going, "What are you doing with my kid?" Right? That's not the that is not the best.
That never works out.
Doesn't. But it's not about the teacher. Because, I mean, let's face it, Nikki, especially in the context you gave, who cares about
Hmm.
the teacher? The teacher's going to change every year. What's
Right.
important is the way that your children are learning from you as an example. That's the most
Right.
important thing. So for me, yeah, do I talk to a bunch of losers sometimes and that I need to deal with? Yeah, but it's important for me to show up in a professional way because that
Uh-huh.
is that is the way that my clients perceive me because they're my kids in many ways,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if
Right.
I'm out there yelling at the pizza driver for obviously there's no reason to yell at the pizza driver, but let's say I am, my clients is gonna be, I guess it's okay to yell at the pizza driver. No, it's not okay,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So that's the key.
So basically, when preparing your communication so that whenever it's in an important moment, you're calm and collected. So I shouldn't be flying by the seat of my pants when I need to talk about something really important.
I mean, you can just make sure your kids aren't there.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I don't want I mean, I've done lost it with them. They've seen the worst of me. I don't know how many times, but I I but I talk to people now that don't know me, so I need to put on a good front. So this is this is something that definitely we all can work on. And I just love those three little tips. Like you kind of turned it into a little game that you can do with your kids to teach them, the basics of communicating and being able to answer on the spot, you know. So I just thought of some stuff that probably would not be a good thing, like teaching your kids how to come up with a good lie, you know.
You're so funny. Here, let me give you another one. So while you're kind of simmering let me give you a personal example with my mom, Nikki.
Yeah.
Me and my mom used to fight all the time, all the time,
Mhm.
all the time, all the time. And the reason was because we live in two different worlds. Because she
Mhm.
immigrated from a third world country, and I was born in a first world country, right,
Right.
Canada.
Right.
So a lot of so for example, she would say things like, "You can't go eat at a friend's house." It's like, but why? Like, it doesn't make any like. So to me, it doesn't make sense. So we used to
Yeah.
bicker all the time until one day I
Mhm.
made the decision to be a leader in the family. So what does that mean? That means a lot of us don't have relationship visions. What does that mean? That means, okay, you might bicker with your mom, you might bicker with your kids, you
Yeah.
might bicker with your significant other.
Mhm.
But ask yourself a more important question, ladies. And the question is, what do you actually want that relationship to be like?
Mm.
What does you actually want it to be like? And I woke up at 15 and I said, you know what? I don't want to yell at my poor mom all the time. I don't want
Yeah.
to be frustrated. So instead of being frustrated at the fact that for some reason she doesn't want me to go eat at my friend's house, let me sit down with her and do something that very few 15-year-old boys do with their mothers.
Ask her why.
Ask her why. Ask her open-ended questions. So I did. And I
Yeah.
figured out very quickly what the core issue was, which
Aw.
was she grew up in a civil war. What do you expect? She doesn't trust anybody. So yeah, of course, yeah. When there's a like, I mean, I know you won't take offenses. When there's a white girl like in the right
Yeah.
house, who's going like she thinks there's like a bomb in the house or something. So okay, even if obviously
I
she's
would
not
only
white,
be worried if they were wearing a vest, okay?
right?
So,
So I listened to it and I just kept asking
right.
her, why is that important to? Why is that important? So I
Right.
listened, and at the end I just said, "But mom, we don't live there anymore," and the issue was solved. That's
Mhm.
it. And me and my mother haven't argued, and this is the greatest gift I can share on the show. It's not my subscriber count. It's not the money I make in the business. I
Yeah.
don't even remember, Nikki. And I live with the woman. I live with my mom. I don't remember the last time I argued with her. I genuinely don't. It's
Aw.
been so long. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with a choice.
Mhm.
And that choice for all of the mothers listening is, what do you want the relationship to be like? Don't talk about what the
Mhm.
relationship is right now. Don't go complaining to me and Nikki about what the relationship is right now.
Yeah, I don't wanna hear it.
Right? Because all of them are. But what I want to hear is, what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be that way the rest of your life?
Right, yeah.
Or like, what kind of relationship do you want with your kids? Dream first,
Uh-huh.
and then ask yourself, who's showing up in that way? How are they showing up? And change your energy. And when you do that, you'll
Yeah.
watch the world change in front of you.
Wow, Brendan, that's such a powerful message. I mean, like, you're teaching me things here, and I mean, things that I should already know about, you know. I just love that you decided to sit down and just ask your mom, well, why can't I go? I mean, because to you, it's just so absurd that you can't go to your friend's house, you know. But here, your mom was like living in a life and death situation, you know, like, and it would be hard to like pull yourself out of that, you know. To me, it would be like dealing with some type of PTSD, you know, thing, you know. Um, so how can we get a hold of you if we need some more skills on communicating?
Absolutely. Okay, this is super fun, by the way. Thanks for having me on. This is great. And yes, I always adapt the messaging of communication to every audience. And I'm talking about mothers, and the next one I talk about
Yeah.
beers, and it's all it always changes.
Well,
But
that's
yes,
good.
absolutely. So two ways to keep in touch. The first one is the YouTube channel Master Talk. So you're
Mhm.
just gonna go to Master Talk. Feel free to watch these videos with your kids or children. It's a great way to learn
Mhm.
for free. And the second way to keep in touch is my website, rockstarcommunicator.com. I do a workshop every few weeks on communication over Zoom. That's
Mhm.
free, and you can register for that and attend it if you'd like.
Well, I love that. I love that. When I saw your website, I was like, I should have I should have known that one.
I got lucky with the URL.
I know. I've not had as much luck with mine, but that's okay. So before we end, what is one last thing that you could leave with, moms who are struggling maybe in their job, or maybe, I mean, it could be as bad as going through a divorce, or trying to communicate with your kids, I mean, I just hate that someone feels they're in a relationship or in some kind of a situation and they just don't know how to express their thoughts, So, what would be like one last thing? I know we've covered a lot of good stuff, so
Absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing that. And of course, my tips won't go all the way. I'm sure there's a lot of struggles that I won't be able to solve for. But here's what I will say,
right.
Nikki, to close this off. I'll say in the context of a man, but I think it applies in the context of a woman as well, in the sense
Mhm.
that be the mother that you wish you had,
Mhm.
right? So in the
Yeah.
context for me, we all make choices in our life. And for me,
Mhm.
my dad was an alcoholic. I had a very dysfunctional family. So I had two
Right.
choices in life. It's either I become the same version of every past generation that's ever come before me, or I
Right.
break the cycle and I just
Mhm.
become the father that I wish I had. So I just chose to be that person. And I think
Oh.
we all have that decision in life where we all get
Yeah.
that choice. So I just did everything that my dad never did for my mom, right? Retired her. Now she's going to Sri Lanka for a month. She's going to go visit family after not seeing them for like 19 years or something crazy,
Wow.
right? Yeah, it's nuts. But I
She's gonna come home and Brenda's not gonna be able to leave the house.
but I think the key is like we all have an option to show up that way. I'm not some multimillionaire, you know what I mean? I'm
Right.
not the
Right.
rich. That's why I live with her, so we keep our expenses low, so I can make the retirement a reality for her,
Yeah.
or else I wouldn't be able to.
Right.
So in the same way I made that decision, all of us have that choice too, in some
Mhm.
small way. Okay,
Mhm.
maybe there's a relationship it's hard to get out of. Totally understand, but there's
Right.
some small way that we can be the mother that we wish we had in our life for our children.
Wow, that just touched my heart. That's so sweet. I am so glad that I was found you. I mean, I didn't find you, um, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with
And
you.
I thought at first, because I was like, I don't know what, but then I was like, you know what? There's sometimes you're just like, I want to talk to this person. So, and I am so glad I that we met up, and we scheduled a meet and greet, and then the interview. And I just feel like you have just this, taken an opportunity to turn it into something positive. And it all started back when you were a young teenager. And I am so sure that your mother is so proud of you. And I hope that you can come back on in the future and we can pal around and have some more
Talk
laughs.
about fatherhood unfiltered.
Yeah. Well, I don't know too much about that. I know what I don't want to see or hear, So, all right. Well, thank you, Brendan. I appreciate it so much that you came on and took some time out to chat with us.
Likewise, Nikki. Thanks so much. This is such a pleasure.